Hey everybody, JJ here, back again for another Wednesday of Zoom networking. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Today's speaker is phenomenal. I love this young lady. I've had a chance to meet her in person. She's out of the Pace Morby Sub 2 community. Again, if we talk about Pace Morby all the time, if you haven't heard of Pace Morby, you're living under a rock. Pace Morby runs the Sub 2 group, which is the premier real estate education program in the country today, bar none, just flat out bar none. But we're here, talking with one of Pace's rock stars. The young lady is an entrepreneur. She's started as a student. She's now coaching other people. She's a businesswoman. She's part of a powerhouse real estate team with her husband, who's also a rock star at Sub 2. My good friend and the ever charming, talented Love Francis. Love, how you doing, girl?
Hi, JJ. Happy Wednesday. This almost feels like deja vu, you know? Happy Wednesday. Yes, I'm a part of Sub 2. My name is Love Francis, soon to be Love Saza. I haven't changed that yet. It takes a long time, as I've come to realize. But we were just mentioning how, you joined Sub 2 last year when there were about 1,500 students. And I was just relating to it, how when I joined in 2020, there were about 20 students. And, just to see how everything has changed and amplified since then, and how many amazing relationships that you can build from just one mentorship. It's, a lifelong mentorship. That's how you and I met, JJ. That's how I met my husband, the love of my life. I joined the mentorship and I didn't get my first deal until a year after I joined the mentorship. But even prior to that, Pace has had such an integral part in my real estate journey, and through helping me with connections, like, getting a job at Batch Services, to just supporting and just being such a pillar of guidance throughout my whole journey. Like, there aren't enough words to commend him and just speak highly of him. So yeah, this mentorship, if you guys aren't in it, it's really life-changing.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. What I like about Pace is, yes, he's knowledgeable, but his personality is warm, and he's genuine. He's real. Pace is
Yeah.
beautiful. So,
Yeah.
well, for those
How did you hear about Sub 2, JJ? How did you get into it?
well, I got into Sub 2 with my networking group. I created a group to stay in touch with all the people that I've met, and more people joined, and more people said, "Can my friends come in?" It's grown and grown. And I started to see some of the more successful students, real estate students in my group, going to this thing called Sub 2 Pace Morby.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what is Sub 2 Pace Morby? I thought it was one word. Sub 2 Pace Morby. Everyone's going to Sub 2 Pace Morby. They said, no, it's Sub 2 Pace Morby. I still didn't know what these three things were. And I eventually got, informed there was a young man named Pace Morby had this group. I couldn't help but notice when one successful student after the next was going to this group. I'm like, I need to know what this group is. And I looked into it a year ago, and I jumped in before I was ready to, in all honesty. But I saw the value in Sub 2. And I knew that if I didn't jump in right when I had that chance, that the price was going to go up. And since I've joined on, of course, the price has gone up. But, I jumped in because I saw it was a program of value, quality content, with a person out in front, meaning Pace himself, who is of good character and fortitude and honest and has integrity and character, far more so than most of the people that are running groups out there. And I just knew that I wanted to kick my game up, and to kick my game up, I needed to be around other people that were also stepping to the plate. So that's how I found out about Sub 2, and I jumped in, and still making my way in various things. My mom had passed away last year, and dealing with some things related to that, and separating properties and other things like that go with that. But I think my biggest win with Sub 2 is taking my networking ability, building relationships with people like yourself. As I say all the time, not chasing the deal, but chasing the relationship, and building genuine friendships and relationships, surrounding myself with the right people, because we're told all the time, we are the result of the 5 people we spend most of our time with. And now those 5 people for me are people around the country like yourself, your husband, Mooney Saza, Daryl Ellison, and Mamadou Diallo, just some of the rock stars in the community are now personal friends of mine. And part of that for me is not even asking anything, just getting to know them as we're doing the episode now. But as you guys build your relationships with rock stars, just by default, it's going to raise your game, just by default. And you surround yourself with great people, you just become better. And that's what I have to say about how I got into Sub 2.
That's really beautiful. One thing I will mention about what you just said was you thought you weren't ready, right? You joined probably before you were ready. But like the question is, when is anyone ready?
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of the theme of life. Like you're never ready, but you just do it anyways. And that's exactly what you did. And out of you not being quote unquote ready, you're able to build such amazing relationships. You're able to build this amazing networking that you provide on a weekly basis to people, connecting people across the nation. So, you know, there's never a time when anyone is ready.
No, you're so very, very true. So, Love, you're like the Miss Transaction Coordinator Extraordinaire. For those that don't know you, you know, a little bit about your past. What part of the country do you live in now, or did you grow up in? And, you know, are you from a big family? Did you have any interests? What was the progression of having you become the person you are today?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So, yeah, my name is Love, and I actually wasn't born in the States. I was born in East Africa, and then I moved to Arizona, which is the state I currently reside in, at the age of 6 years old with my parents. And I've lived in Arizona since then. We're actually moving next week to Virginia, and this is the first time I've moved to a different state. So I'm really nervous for like the snow, and I guess that, you know, it's really cold there. I don't even know what that is. But I essentially grew up, I'm the oldest of now 6 children, but I grew up with immigrant parents, you know, and I grew up in a household where my dad was working 3 jobs, you know, just to kind of keep food in our mouth and to keep a roof over our heads. So, I've never not known what it's meant to work hard. And as I've grown older, I found myself in a position where I was working like 2 jobs just to be able to pay for everything. And I was like, there has to be like another way. It's not just about working hard, you know? Like, I know that, but I'm like, there has to be more than this. And it was at a point where I was working as a bartender, and I was working as a supervisor at a private resort in Scottsdale. And I was getting cash flow, right, every night, but it was at the expense of working like 7 days a week, like no days off. And then I was getting 2 paychecks, you know, and it would like coincide where I was like getting paid every night, every week. And it was amazing, but like I was so tired. I was so exhausted. And I'm like, I need to look into something more than this. And I went into the rabbit hole of becoming a student of YouTube University. I have my PhD at YouTube University. And that's kind of where I found out about Pace, Jamil, Brent, and I found out about real estate and this thing called wholesaling. And I was like, what is this? And I just kind of took time to really understand what all of that meant. And then I joined the free Facebook group of Pace Morby, and I learned about creative financing. And I'm like, I get the grasp of it, but there's more to it. And then that's when he, you know, started his mentorship. And I'm like, I don't know, like, I don't have enough money for this, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to figure out a way because the way I look at things is like, if there's a will, there's a way, like I will always make it work. Like I have such a strong will, and I know if I want something, I will always make it happen, regardless of how long it takes me, regardless of what I have to go through to do it. So I ended up joining the mentorship. It was because of the push of my mom, and like I depleted my savings just to be able to pay for it. And of course, the creative finance guy would allow installment payments. So that's how I was able to afford those monthly payments through those installment payments. And it really saved my life, but it was so worth it. And like you mentioned, I felt like at that time I wasn't ready, but I'm like, there's something here. And I just put all of my hope and my dreams into that. Until this day, it's the only mentorship I've been a part of. And I probably will join other mentorships, but I don't really need to. And that's a beautiful thing about Sub 2, because there's so many things in there, right? But that's kind of how I got my start in it. And I thought I was going to be this like big shot investor negotiating and doing all of these cool things. But soon after, I realized that's just not for me, and that's the beautiful thing about real estate, is that you can accomplish like all of your goals, and it doesn't have to be this cookie cutter way of being a wholesaler or negotiating or being on the phones 24/7 and getting cursed out 100 times. Like, I'm a sensitive soul. Like, I don't want to get cursed out 1,000 times a day. Like, I'm not about that life. But I found this route for me through TC, and it's been life-changing, and it's been like such a journey within itself.
After I jumped into Sub 2, one of the first things I caught wind of, and obviously there are other things that have come about recently, the Gator Lending, the Elephant Challenge, but the Avatar program.
Yeah.
But early on, one of the things I heard were some of the descriptions, which were the acquisitions manager and your dispo manager, dispositions manager, the integrator, which is more of a computer back end, a website kind of person, the transaction coordinator role, and then the visionary role. And you're here with us today because you set a standard. You just put yourself on a different level with the quality of what you've done, and you set the standard for a transaction coordinator. For those that don't know what that is, watching this presentation for the first time, can you tell people what a transaction coordinator is, what one does?
Yeah, so it's so crazy because in the creative world, a transaction coordinator means something completely different than in the traditional world. And I've come to realize that. I've come to grasp of what a transaction coordinator is through the creative world, and how Pace would highlight his TCs and what they do, right? So I always thought, oh, that's what a TC is, until I started talking to like realtors and people outside of the creative world. And they're like, actually, that's not what they do. So in the traditional sense, through traditional real estate, realtors have transactions coordinators, and they help with the facilitation of a coordination of a transaction, right? So in regards to sending contracts out and handling the escrow process and relaying information from the escrow company to the realtor, that's kind of their realm of what they do. Within that, they don't contact the sellers. They don't talk to the sellers. Actually, that's a realtor's job, right? They're just on the back end stuff. And with a creative TC, and what I do and what my company does, and what you'll find a lot of TCs in our creative community, and what they do, they essentially will help you with drafting contracts once you've come to a verbal agreement with a seller in regards to any creative terms. If it's a subject to, which essentially just means you're acquiring an existing mortgage, or if it's a hybrid deal where it's, you're acquiring an existing mortgage and then you're also paying the seller their equity in installments, or whether it's like a novation agreement where, you're partnering up with the seller and you're bringing in funds to renovate the property and then list it on the open market. We handle all of that, and we handle the preparation of the documents. And with what I do specifically, I get on the phone with your sellers. I go over the contracts. I make them feel comfortable with this process because there are so many nuances that goes on with a creative deal, right? There's so many red flags. There's so many questions that they have. And I can do it in my sleep now, but I have the ability to really connect with sellers and really care for who they are and be able to understand where they're coming from and make them feel comfortable with the whole transaction. So that's my superpower. And then, of course, we handle the whole escrow process, right? In regards to finding a title company in your prospective state, opening escrow, relaying information to all parties, handling addendums, extensions, assignments. We also draft first and second and third lien positions if you want it, in a deed of trust format or in a note format. Like we kind of do everything under the umbrella. And in addition to that, we also set up servicing, right? And a lot of times you'll talk to a seller and, they'll have these, these speculations about creative finance. And they're like, how can we ensure that you're going to make monthly payments? How will you make consistent payments? And, what you tell them is we set up servicing after close of escrow. And that's basically through a third party. And that's, making sure that every single month payment is getting deducted from your account to their account, or from your account to the lender who has their existing first lien, that existing mortgage. And then, there's just proof of that. And there's documentation and there's tracking of all of that. And that's essentially what servicing is. But yeah, we help with all of that. And that's what a creative TC does, which differs from a traditional TC.
Wow. Yeah. That sounds like a lot going on there, needless to say.
A lot of moving parts, truthfully.
So now,
Yeah.
how did you become a TC? I mean, you didn't just like step into the role and do all these things. Did you learn little by little, or did you shadow somebody? Or
Yeah, so 90% of what I've learned was just through trial and error and just doing it. And the 10%, I did shadow Rochelle for a little bit, for like a month, from Constant Close, right? And she's amazing. But literally everything I learned was through just figuring it out, JJ. Like I said, I have a strong will. So I actually practice a lot of the things on my husband's transactions. And that's how I've been able to add on to my list of things that I can do when it comes to, drafting these deeds of trust or setting up servicing. It was through a lot of trials and errors through his transactions, because like he mentioned, he acquires a lot of properties that he turns into Airbnbs or multifamilies, and he gets private money to get secured in a position. And so some title companies will not draft any deeds of trust, any notes. So I've had to come in and learn how to do all of that for his lenders to be able to protect them. That's another tip for everyone who is, working on connecting with private money lenders. You always want to protect your lenders, right? If a title company can't draft those deeds of trust, you can find another one, or you can find a TC who's knowledgeable on that, and they'll draft it. It just has to kind of get notarized outside of close of escrow. And then it gets sent back to the title company. A lot of times they'll go ahead and record it for you if you ask them nicely.
now let me ask you, as you're coordinating transactions for different investors, would you do transactions for people that live in another state other than yourself, and maybe their properties even in a third different state? Is that unusual, or is that kind of the standard?
Oh, that's the standard. Yeah. I won't sit here and say I've coordinated in every single state, but I've coordinated in a majority of states, and I have a lot of states where, as you know, right? Like in the investment world, there are those states where it's just appealing for real estate investors, where they just want to buy up a lot of properties. Like you have the Atlantas, the Phoenix, some cities in Michigan. You have these cities where investors gravitate towards. So I do have a lot of more business in those type of cities, but we can work anywhere, right? As long as it makes sense, as long as we can find a title company that will help us out, or as long as we're able to find any type of people that can just help us in general, because I can also, do all of that in regards to, doing a self-performance, right? Which means that you're not using a title company to record the warranty deed when you're transferring a subject to deal, because some title companies, like if you have like an FHA loan, or if you have a VA loan, they won't touch the transactions. So it just really depends. But yeah, I work in a lot of states.
Well, no, let me ask you, a question roughly to that. If someone has a VA loan or an FHA and the title companies won't handle that, then how does something like that get handled?
Yeah, so we do have title company partners where they'll pull the title commitment. It just won't have any title insurance. And that's something that you have to willingly accept, and something you have to see if you want to take on. And then after that, it's just pretty simple, right? It's about transferring the warranty deed, so you gain ownership of the property. And then there are other details like, the portals and servicing and post-closing docs and all of these things that we already have that can help you with that transfer of ownership.
Wow, fantastic. Hey, we got a question coming in us right now. So let me move right to this person here. Louis Joseph, you are on with Love Francis. What's your question?
Hello, Love. The question I had is like, in a sub-2 deal, let's say if you're the seller is in foreclosure or pre-foreclosure is going into foreclosure, do you also contact the banks?
Yeah, we do. It's not something that we do regularly, but we just actually helped our client out in Florida with something similar. Florida and Tennessee, where they came to us and they're like, hey, the seller is going into foreclosure. Their auction date is literally next week. Like, what can we do? And we ended up calling the lenders, the attorneys, and we were able to push them back until next year. So that's definitely something we do.
Okay. Thank you.
When you're talking about transaction coordinating, how long does a transaction take from the time you jump on as coordinator to the time it's done? Is this a matter of days, a matter of weeks, a matter of months? Obviously, it varies by the transaction, but
right.
Is there kind of a standard, or is there a ballpark or anything like that?
Yeah, I like to set expectations up front where if you're coming to me and you're like, hey, I need this closed in a week, like, I'm sorry, bud. I don't know if that'll work out, right? Because it's not a lot of times on us, but it's the partners we're working with. A title commitment typically takes anywhere. And if it's a good title company, it can take like 4 days. But if it's just a regular title company, it can take anywhere from like 7 to 14 days and sometimes even longer, right? So we need these things done, and we need documents executed by the seller in order to protect you as the client. So as long as everything is done in a timely manner, I do like to set that expectation that on average, it takes about 3 weeks to a month for a transaction to close.
Okay.
And more so on the month side. Yeah. And there are times, right, where if there was an auction getting pushed back, if there is stuff that pulls up on the title commitment, like judgments or whatever the case may be, it may take way longer because now we're working with more parties, right? We're calling out, we're having the title company reach out to these lien holders and verifying payoffs. And a lot of times they kind of push things to the back too, right? So we have to come in and step in and help with that. So it just all depends on the transaction. It all depends on the transaction, and every transaction is different. There's not one transaction that's the same.
Now, what's the longest transaction you've ever had to run through?
Oh my gosh. Let's So I have two transactions right now, one in New York and then one in Delaware. And they're both with people in sub two. The one in New York is with Tristan, and this has been with us since March, both actually since March of 2022. And of course, it's because there was probate going along. There's a loan modification. There were these things that kept popping up. So that's why. But yeah, those are the longest transactions I've had in my system.
Wow. Mr. Darren Samarel, my friend, you are on with Love Francis. What's your question?
Hi, Love. How you doing?
Hi, Darren. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Can you touch more? Can you touch on the VA sub 2 again a little bit more? Because I have one that I'm trying to do in California, but I'm looking for the right transaction coordinator team. So, have you done a lot of these?
Yeah, I've done a handful of them in Texas, or Michigan, or even Ohio, right? Title companies will close on them all day, no problem. But then there are other states, and even some, depending on the counties, where they won't touch it at all. So it is just something where you have to ask the title company if they just handle VA loans.
Okay.
And it just depends. I have, if you're in California, I have a title company that I can refer to, and they handle VAs. Yeah.
Nice.
So
Okay.
just message me and I'll go ahead. Yeah, I'll go ahead and send you that.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
So, Love, you're talking about a little earlier about title companies, and you mentioned it a couple of times. I know, I'm doing a huge house in Southern California right now. I'm rehabbing this thing, which you and Munif will, of course, be invited to the housewarming when the house gets done. But people say about contractors sometimes you can't get too comfortable with them, because then the contractor gets too comfortable and you have to sort of circle through to another one eventually. Mm-hmm. Are title companies the same way, or do you get a good title company and just ride that horse forever?
Yes. So when you find a good title company, you just ride that horse forever. But finding the right title company, that's actually the real issue. And that's where I find the most biggest struggle, is finding a competent, efficient, effective title company that's very responsive. And we like to interview our title companies. I have someone on my team who, that's what he does specifically, is he calls title companies and asks them a list of questions of, how long does it take for a title commitment to come back? What is your response rate? All of these detailed questions, because we like to hold them accountable, right? Because that's important. And they can a lot of times hold things back, and we don't want to deal with that.
A friend of mine was Chicago title, but are all title companies through multiple states, or do you find that it's better to, in some instances, people say that you want to find a good local bank in certain municipalities. Is it best to find a local title company for each city, or does sometimes you having one title company that covers multiple states?
So yes, you can have one title company that covers multiple states, but you have to reach out to that title company specifically in that corresponding state. And just because a title, First International Title in Florida does such a great job with our sub 2s doesn't mean a First International in Texas will do a great job.
As you're doing transactions on various deals,
okay,
is there one type of deal that pops up more frequently than others? I mean, I know that Chuck Billy, who came and spoke to us, did an unbelievable couple novations where he had killed it, knocked it out of the park with 2 deals in 1 month. But what's the more, is a novation less frequent? Is it more regular? Is there certain types of transactions you see most and certain ones you don't see very much?
Yeah. So truthfully, I deal with less wholesale deals, right? We still have wholesale deals in our system, but especially in this market where cash really isn't working that greatly unless you get it at a steep discount. I'm seeing way more creative strategies done. Novations are even going less now because of that same situation. But I have a handful of novations that I deal with. And then my most common type of transaction are sub twos and hybrids and seller finances. Those are kind of like what fills up 80% of my pipeline currently. Chuck Billy, he's amazing. He like not only does novations in California, but I think he does them like nationwide, right? Like he does them in Georgia.
Yeah. He's last I heard he was, I think in South or North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a really good team that he works with. The three guys just are unbelievable. John Poindexter and Ryan. The three guys are just killing it.
They're amazing. They're amazing.
Now,
in the beginning, when I started doing TC work, because I had to learn a lot of this stuff on my own, and I would be that person that's like, people would come to me, and because I just wanted to learn, like, have you ever done this, or do you know how to do this? I'm like, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. And with novations, I had to like call Chuck, and he really guided me and gave me a lot of insight. So he's amazing. I appreciate him so much.
He is so nice. He's like a gentle giant. You know, the first time I met him was in Phoenix at a boot camp for a different education company other than Sub 2. And of course, he's very, very tall, very, very big guy, and rock and roll singer. And well, he's got a personality that you can't ignore. And I had to go up and introduce myself and get to know him, and you know, we become friends. And just such a great guy.
He's amazing. He's so knowledgeable, and he's like a jack of all trades. You know, his music, real estate, like he just kind of does it all. So
now let me ask you, as a transaction coordinator, you see a lot of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any that as you've done this that has inspired you to take on or maybe pursue a certain type of transaction to acquire your own properties?
Yeah. So shortly after I learned the paperwork, I locked up my first sub 2 like a month later. Like I learned all the paperwork stuff, and I saw a post from like a high school acquaintance, and they were trying to sell their deal to Open Door. And I'm like, hold on, I have an option for you. Let me tell you about all the reasons why you shouldn't go with that offer. And so I was able to, because of my knowledge of self-performing and sub 2s, it was actually an FHA loan. And in Arizona, title companies will not touch that. So I actually self-closed on it, but I just pulled a title commitment from a title company. And you don't tell them, guys, if it's like an FHA or a VA and they don't handle it, you don't tell them that it's a sub 2. Just say, hey, I have a deal and I'm looking for a title commitment, and you just leave it at that, because the point of that is you want to verify that there aren't any other liens. The only lien you want on there would be that existing mortgage. So a title commitment protects you, but you don't let them know, hey, I actually am looking to close this sub 2. So that's what I did. I went to a title company, I got the title commitment, and then I self-performed on it, and I closed on it. And it's a property that was a rental for 1 year, and then now we're turning it into an Airbnb. So it's going to go live in like hopefully like 2 weeks.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
So has this obviously increased your knowledge about transactions? Is there a type of transaction that you yourself find most appealing or desirable, or that's kind of something that you and Manif want to look at in particular, or is everything's kind of just equal game to you?
Yeah, no. So like, I don't do a lot of the Morby method stuff. I know the concept of it. I understand it completely, but I don't really touch it, you know? So that's something that's maybe a little intimidating, I would say. But sub 2, seller finances, hybrids, those are like so easy for me now. Those are like second nature. One thing that we are focusing on more, we're acquiring more property sub 2s, and then we're going and wrapping it. And what essentially that means is, let's say we bought a property for $200,000, we close on it and then we go ahead and wrap it for like $300,000 to an end buyer. So there are so many nuances when it comes to the B2C part. The A to B is easy, but there are so many nuances that I'm learning as we go. And so that's something that I'm very excited to really become an expert at.
Kimberly Land, you are on with Love Francis.
Thank
I was
you,
going to
dear.
ask you what your question is, but I think I just heard you're in Alaska. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm in Alaska.
Wow, fantastic.
I
Okay,
know.
so what's your question for Love?
So, Love, I had a question. You mentioned the title commitment, because I have a couple of deals like that now. It's pretty challenging to get title companies on board with sub-twos here. They won't do it. It's very conservative.
Mhm.
So I just closed a deal and we had to self-perform. But this other deal is slightly simpler. But what I'm looking for, I have the title report. I just need the insurance. And you said something about they'll provide the commitment, but don't tell them it's a sub-2. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. So you just, with sub-twos, unfortunately, if you are self-performing it, you're not going to get title insurance, because title insurance is just for the sake of them closing on it, right? Saying they pulled the title commitment, they closed on it, and that's a tool that you can use to protect yourself if something happens on the HUD or they messed up the numbers or whatever the case may be. But you would just, you're getting that title commitment just to verify there aren't any other liens associated. And you can get title insurance after you close, but of course, like that's after you close, right? But that's another way that some people do it, is just get it after they close.
So then maybe I don't understand the title commitment versus the insurance, because I thought the commitment was the insurance. So what's the difference?
A title commitment is just a report. A title commitment has Schedule A, Schedule B. It shows any encumbrances. It shows any liens associated and tied to the property. It just has a report on the property itself. So that's that tool that you do want to use if you are going to self-perform, to make sure that, you know, there aren't any things that the seller didn't mention that pop up.
Okay, that makes sense. So then that's what I have now. I paid for that. I have that already for the property. And then I wanted to insure it, but I wasn't sure if I should tell them that I wanted to insure it, but now I understand I have to figure that part out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
What's the cost to utilize your services?
Yeah, good question. So depending on the transaction, depending on what you want, right? So if it's a wholesale transaction, it's $700 to draft contract, get on the phone with your seller and handle the whole process. But it's $100 cheaper if you have the contracts yourself, and we have a lot of very seasoned investors who will lock up the contract while they're talking to their seller, and they just don't want to think about it afterwards, right? They just want to say, hey, I just want to get paid at closing. So if that's you and that fits your personality, then it is that flat $600. And then for creative deals, sub-twos, hybrids, seller finance, it is $850 if you have the executed contract. And then if you don't, it's $1,000.
So at what point in time, does one bring on a transaction coordinator? Some people, listening to pay, some people had a team and different people are on their team, like they've got their own team. But as you're explaining this, you're not necessarily on one team except for maybe Munif's team. But you does a transaction coordinator work almost like in a freelance capacity where they provide their services as they're needed?
Yeah. So per transaction, right? I do work with clients who use me for all of their TCs, where they're more of a smaller team where it's just them and their partner, and they're doing like 5 to 7 deals a month, right? So me and my team do become a part of their team. And again, they're incorporated into our Slack channels. They have a portal with us, and they bring us on once they've negotiated terms with the seller and the seller is ready to sign, right? Because I am a TC at the end of the day. Although I can sweet talk, although I can talk to sellers and make them feel comfortable, I'm not here to negotiate for you. That's not what I do. And in the beginning, I didn't know that line. I would do stuff that was beyond my jurisdiction. And I would see this assignment fee and I'm like, wait, I helped negotiate this. I'm not getting any of that, which is fine, but I'm not here to negotiate for you. So you need to do that on your own. And I come in and make them feel comfortable and explain the process to them after you guys have already negotiated with your sellers and have come to terms of, you're paying them out in 20 years. This is how much you're paying them on their equity. Those are the kind of parameters that you need to set with your seller before you bring me and my team on.
Then someone who's doing a transaction, they go out, they find their lead, they communicate with the seller, they then negotiate their terms, the price, and things of this nature.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And when this happens, is it best for these investors? It seems to me it would be best that they maybe, do they contact you up front and let you know that they're lining something up so that you're aware, or do most people just go and say, okay, I've got an agreement, now I've got to go find a transaction coordinator?
It's a little bit of both. I have both. If you want to do things effective and efficient, because when you're negotiating with the seller, it's not just like it happens, but it's rare where you just call them on the first call and they agree to everything and you're locking them up, right? These things typically take anywhere from like 7 to 14 conversations, sometimes more. So you have an idea of where you're at in that negotiation phase and how much are they leaning towards signing, right? So you're bringing me on once you guys have already talked about terms. They're saying, hey, I just have to have, I have to talk to my daughter, I have to talk to my son, but I'm ready to sign. Then that's when you come to us and you're like, I have a deal and I need help. When they're ready, will you guys be able to get on the phone with them and draft it? So that's when you get onboarded. That's when you submit a web form. You give us the details so we can draft the contracts for you. We set a time within like a 24-hour mark where we touch base with your sellers, coordinate a time, and then get on the phone with them so we can go over everything and then help you get signatures.
That's fantastic. Now you're extremely impressive. Extremely impressive. What part of the whole process, is there something that you really enjoy doing, and is there something that you really do not enjoy doing?
That's such a good question, JJ. That's a great question. So I am the only owner of my company. So I am a visionary and an integrator when it comes to a lot of things. I have a team that helped me. I've within the past, I would say 6 months, I've built a team. So I used to do everything on my own, right? And I used to do so many things for free too. And all of that has really helped me to learn so much, has helped me to really gain an understanding of creative finance, a deep understanding of it. And I'm at a point now where I'm focused on so many other things where I just want to be able to bring clients on, get on the phone with sellers and go over contracts. But the back end stuff, I have a team that handles that. I have an operations manager, I have a TC under me, and I have VAs, right? So we have like a full blown team to call lenders, to get payoffs, to submit loan authorizations, like all of these things that take up so much time. I've been able to create systems and processes where I have team members who focus on those things. So the bigger picture is getting to the finish line in a more effective and efficient manner. So to answer your question, I love getting on the phone with clients. I love getting on the phone with sellers, making them feel comfortable. I love talking to title companies, explaining to them sub-twos. I love the bigger picture things. That's what brings me joy. Now, the little things on the back end, being on the phone with lenders for hours on end, sending out addendums to extend close of escrow. I have teams and VAs who do that. I'm focused on the higher activity things.
Now, as we started the conversation, you're talking about sellers and buyers and the contracts. Now, how do the lenders, I know how the lenders play into the transaction, but how is the transaction coordinator? How is your interface with the lenders, and how extensive is that? I guess it sounds like the seller just kind of backs out and lets you handle everything till the end.
So actually, it's a combination of both. There is a document when you guys are dealing with creative finance transactions, if it's a sub 2 or a hybrid, you always need a loan authorization signed with all of the contracts. And that loan authorization is that document that allows you to contact the lender on behalf of the seller saying, hey, the seller has signed, this is their signature, this is their date of birth, this is the last 4 digits of their social security number, and they have given me permission to call on behalf of them to be able to retrieve loan information. So that document alone helps us be able to retrieve details where we don't need the seller, but that's not for all lenders, right? All lenders are different. There are times where they still need the seller on the phone. So we are in open communication with the seller. We're sending out introduction texts, we're sending out introduction calls, we're giving sellers updates on a weekly, daily basis. Like they become like our sellers, right? Where we're on a first name basis with them, and they understand what part we play in the transaction. So if we do need them to be able to get on the phone and give approval, then we can go ahead and do that.
Let me ask you about lenders. I hear about good lenders and bad lenders all the time. Good lenders, everyone has great things to say, but I hear some people experience lenders that maybe aren't forthright or they're not doing things. How often do you encounter that? And with your experience now, are you able to recognize someone that might be questionable as far as their integrity as a lender? And do you then notify the seller that, hey, you might want to look for another path? Does anything like that present itself?
Well, so I guess I need to ask you for clarification. You're talking about lenders that own the mortgage, correct? Not private money lenders. Because when I'm referring to lenders, I'm talking about the institution. Like Wells Fargo is a lender, Flagstar Bank is the lender. Like these are institutions where even if it is a little bit more trickier to be able to retrieve information, a lot of times the seller, like they're kind of so deep into it where they don't really have the ability to like switch things around, especially if like they owe money, if our client is coming in to reinstate stuff. So even if they are, excuse my language, shitty, there's not much that they can do in those instances.
When you clarify, you're referring more to the institutional lenders that are probably owning the property to some extent. Is that what it is?
Correct. Where they have that first position deed of trust, where they have equitable interest of the property, right? The sellers have the deed to the property, but when you really look at it, Wells Fargo owns the property because they own a majority of the price of the property, right? They have a first position lien of $300,000 on the property when the property is worth like $350,000.
Yeah,
so yes, I'm talking about the institutional lenders.
Now, along that same line, do you transaction coordinate for like short sales at all, or is that a completely different type of beast?
That's a completely different type of beast, and typically realtors help with short sales. And I don't know if you know who Angie and Tanisha. I think they help with short sales as well. Mm-hmm. But that's not something I do. No.
Yeah, Tanisha's going to be on as a guest speaker soon, and I've been talking to Angie. We're trying to get more of the ladies out of Sub 2 in here, and
I love it. Yeah, ask them if they do it. I'm sorry if I misspoke for them, but I think they do.
Well, either way, they're recognized as being quality people in Sub 2 and bringing value to the community, and thus their names are recognized.
Yeah, no, they're amazing. They're amazing.
My group's a networking group, mm-hmm. and I try and, bring to light the people the importance of building relationships. But yourself as someone who is new to real estate and then a student and then a successful student and now recognized as one of the premier transaction coordinators in the country.
Thank you.
What is your take on the importance for either the new or the experienced real estate investor mm-hmm. for not only networking or maybe participating with a group, something like the one that we have, our networking group? What's the importance of networking for the real estate investor?
Oh my goodness, the list is endless, and you've talked about this in so many different ways, but the real power is in the relationships you build, right? It's about being in these rooms because you don't know what the other person in that room may know, or you don't know what door they may open for you. So it's really important to put yourself out there. And I'm still even working on it, right? My husband inspires me because he does such a good job at it. But it's vital to be around people who inspire you. And that's the most important thing, is you want to be in a space where you're constantly learning, you know? What's that saying? If you're like the smartest person in the room, like you're in the wrong room.
That's it.
You know, you wanna be in a place where you're challenged and where people push you to want to be the best version of yourself. And that's what's the most important thing about being in these spaces.
Exactly. For anyone that wants to get in touch with Love, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll reach out to her. And I'm JJ the Connector, so I'll connect you guys. But if you're watching the video right now on YouTube with Love, please like her video down below, and in the comments, please put something in there that's going to help Love. It's going to help the video. And thank you guys for watching today. If you're on the presentation right now, live in the Zoom call, hang on. I'm going to go to some breakout rooms. And on behalf of Love and myself, want to thank you guys for watching today, for joining us. And please come back for more. Again, for myself, you can find me jjazizian.com. Look for me on Facebook. Please join my group so we can help you with your network and building your business. On behalf of Love and myself, thank you guys so much. See you soon.
I appreciate you, JJ. This was so fun. Thank you guys. Have a great evening.